Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so very much for your patience, and thank you so much for being here on this beautiful Winnipeg evening. We are here, of course, to celebrate the launch of For the Love of a Son, a memoir of addiction, loss, and hope by Scott Oake. You may applaud. We're going to make you applaud again, so please do be ready. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, and the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Innuit, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We're so grateful you could all be here in person and virtually. I'm also keenly aware that I'm the least interesting person who will be speaking into a microphone this evening, so I will keep my announcements very brief. Just a few quick housekeeping notes before we begin. There will be an introduction from the podium, and then we'll move along to a conversation with our guests of honor, Scott Oake and our host, Shelagh Rogers. During the evening, there may, if time permits, be an opportunity to ask questions. So if the floor is open, please do allow those to percolate a little bit over the course of the evening. I will approach you with this microphone, which is not because we don't trust you to project, it just ensures those watching the live stream can hear your question. I'll be back at the end with some incredibly exciting notes about signing procedures, so please do stay tuned for that. The only thing I will put in your heads right now is at the end of the event, we'll ask you all to remain in place for just one moment so we can safely transport Scott to the signing table in the first place so the signing can begin. Now, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Kyle Gertzen, Director of Programs at the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre.
Good evening, everyone. Great to be here with you this evening. So yes, I'm Kyle Gertzen. I'm the Director of Programs at the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre. So I can say I finished reading the book a few weeks ago, and this book will absolutely resonate deeply with any person or family member who's been impacted by addiction. One of the things that struck me was Scott and Darcy's efforts in doing everything they could to help Bruce. The key word here being everything. Families often shoulder the immense burden of their loved one's struggles, and the goal is usually the same: to keep the person safe long enough for the miracle of recovery to take hold. But the book so clearly illustrates recovery and stability are not always guaranteed. However, Scott's reflections in the book on what appeared to positively impact Bruce along the way have profoundly informed what we do at the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre. The energy that Scott and Darcy devoted to helping Bruce in grief was channeled into building a world-class treatment facility. And this energy is the foundation of the strong family-oriented culture that we've created at Bruce Oake. And this is a culture that gives people the foundation to rebuild their lives. The Bruce Oake Recovery Centre stands to ensure that no family, friend, or community member is left to endure the heartbreak and devastation of losing a loved one to addiction. And this mission, led by the Oake family, has ignited a movement which is drawing in countless individuals who are sick and tired of watching their loved ones, their friends, their neighbors, and their communities stolen by this relentless illness. So to Scott, we thank you for sharing Bruce's story and your family's journey with such honesty and courage. This book is more than just a memoir. It's a call to action. It's a source of strength, and it's a testament to Bruce's enduring legacy. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce veteran Canadian broadcast journalist and former host and producer of CBC's Radio The Next Chapter, Shelagh Rogers, and Bruce Oake Recovery Centre co-founder and now published author, Scott Oake.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Thank you to everybody who is here. There's an overflow audience that we just met and greeted. And hello to everybody who's watching online. And first of all, thank you to you for being here this evening. And I'm very honored to speak with you.
Weather is terrible. I contemplated staying home.
Did you really? I would have hunted you down. Congratulations on the book. How wonderful.
Thank you, Shelagh.
How's it feeling?
Well, I'm happy the book is meeting with positive response, but I do acknowledge that it was very difficult to write it. Well, as I say in the acknowledgements, technically speaking, I wrote it. Practically speaking, I spoke gibberish to the ghostwriter for probably 80 hours, and he took my streams of consciousness and put them into English. But he has made the book sound like me. And all he had to do that was put in a bunch of F sharps.
It sounds like Be Natural to me.
Yeah.
Really
No,
does.
the book does sound like me, and it is our story, and you did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Difficult to write and difficult to read, and even now, when I pick it up, I'll rifle through it and get to a spot, and I gotta go, I can't read that, and put it down. So there's that, but it was a very worthwhile exercise. And I hope that it will let families know that they're not alone, and that there is hope, even if our story ended with Bruce's tragic passing, but there is hope, and that hope is offered on a daily basis at the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre.
About midway through the book, you do talk about the end and Bruce's tragic death. The next chapter is called The Beginning. What was beginning then?
When Bruce died, our goal became to introduce the concept of long-term treatment at no cost to Winnipeg and to Manitoba, because Bruce had the best year of his addicted life at a long-term treatment center in Calgary called Simon House. He stayed there for a year the first time. And we always believed that if he had stayed even longer, he would still be alive. So the idea that that could work in Winnipeg and in Manitoba was foremost in our minds. And so what we did was we started telling Bruce's story in public. And we left nothing out. It was a graphic presentation, replete with police living in our house, all of that. You'll read it in the book. I don't want to say too much because I want you to buy the book. But every time we made one of those presentations, there was a lineup of people afterwards to tell us their stories about loved ones who were struggling with addiction. And that became our impetus to continue. And we did. And soon enough, we were in the public consciousness to the extent that we were able to become a foundation, form a board of directors, became a registered charity, and we started raising money. And then we went to the city to ask for help, and that led us to a piece of property on which the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre now stands, that you visited last week.
Yeah, well, it was an amazing couple of hours. Just, I'll get to the center later, but first I want to talk about Bruce and Bruce as a kid. I won't go to the moment of conception, but I will go to the moment.
I don't mind talking about that. So it was a dark and stormy night. A few bottles of wine, and you know how it goes.
That's more than I know. But you were at work. You were at the Canada Summer Games in St. John, New Brunswick, when you got a call from your wife, Anne. And
Right.
What did she tell you?
Anne was in the front closet of her parents' home on Essex Street in St. Vital. She was staying with her parents, and her Uncle Jim lived with them as well, because she was 9 months pregnant. And we were hopeful that she wouldn't go into labor until I got home. That would have required her to last another week, but it didn't work. So she's in the closet of her her parents' home, and I got a call in my hotel room.
I just don't know, why is she in the closet?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
I make it sound like she lived in the closet. She was, yeah. It was the only place she could sleep. No, she was in the closet because that was her. She didn't want to upset anybody. She wanted it to be completely quiet and not upset her mother or whatever. So she wanted to make the call in complete silence. And the call was kind of like, I'm in the closet and my water just broke. And I went, what? And so I organized a flight home, and
Half a country away, as you say. Yeah.
and I got home just in time. She was in the birthing room at St. Boniface Hospital, and I ran up to her thinking, this is a wonderful moment. My wife's about to give birth to our first child, and I gave her a hug, and her exact words were, "Get your effing hands off me." And feel the love. Oh, I had coffee breath, and she was in her 16th hour of labor, I think, and she was in no mood for any of that nonsense, you know, hugs or kisses or whatever. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, the Bruce, it was a difficult birth, and they finally, Dr. Francis Lee was the obstetrician, and he finally decided at 2 in the, I think at 1 in the morning, that he had to get Bruce out by forceps. And so he came out, and with a football shaped head that eventually took the right shape. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got in a car and went to the airport and flew back to the Canada Summer Games. And I am ashamed, according to today's standards, I am ashamed to tell that story, because, you know, the Canada Summer Games could have done without me. But it was in an era when, you know, you just did whatever it took to complete your job. And plus, in my business back then, when you want to make it, and you didn't want anyone else to take your place, because if they do a better job, then you'll never get on the air again. Yeah. And I guess that was part of the motivation too. But it's when I tell that story now, it's almost embarrassing. But that's the way it was back then.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. And do you remember when, well, I don't expect you to remember exactly, but Lou Gehrig came in and filled in for a guy named Wally Pipp?
Yes, yeah.
And now Wally Pipp is a verb. So you could have been Wally Pipped if you hadn't gone all the way back to St. John.
Well, the one thing that I was very aware of is that there are many people in this business far better than me, and I had to do whatever it took to keep them from taking my job.
You're very humble, and you're very humble through the whole story as well. Before you left, you did get to hold Bruce.
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, I spent an hour with him. I guess 45 minutes in the nursery, and he was perfect. Yeah, it just I remember that vividly, and. You know, having to leave was that hurt, but yeah, it was a special time. This is probably the only time in his life I saw him with his mouth closed and saying nothing.
And he liked to sleep for a long time. He was a great kid for the first couple of years.
He was the perfect baby for 2 years. He would go to bed at 6:30 or 7 o'clock and sleep right through the night. I remember the first night he did it, we were up every 2 hours with fingers under his nose to make sure he was still breathing. And he was that way for the first 2 years of his life, to the extent that Anne had gone back to work, and she was having maybe 2 hours a day with him. You know, get him up in the morning and get home at night, and he had to go to bed about an hour and a half after she got home. So her return to work lasted, I think, 3 months, and that was it. She said, I can't take this, and she quit. Yeah.
And then you had another son who's sitting in the front row. Hi, Darcy.
Yes.
And
I hear he's a lovely man.
I know he's a lovely man and an incredibly talented illusionist. And I'm only going to say nice things about you, Darcy, in case, you know, you throw a little fire on me and it turns into a dove. Who knows what will happen? But I'm sorry, thanks very much for doing that. So you talk about how great and really well behaved Bruce was for the first 2 years. Then what happened?
Some sort of switch went off in his head, and he became argumentative. And well, how argumentative can a 2-year-old be? He was basically, we just, you know, thought this is 2-year-old behavior. But Bruce became a handful from that point on. Didn't like this, didn't like that, argued over a lot of stuff. I recall vividly a lot of things, but the one day that we were trying to get to the cottage, and I think, what would Bruce have been then, Darcy? Probably 5. And we put the kids in the back seat of the car, but of course Bruce wanted the seat that Darcy had. And nothing would do, but he had to have that seat. And then it was an argument over something else. And we just couldn't get out of the driveway. And so finally I grabbed him, held him up, and gave him a whack on the ass. It's the only time I ever spanked Bruce in his entire existence. And he ran to the end of the driveway and he looked at the neighbors across the street. He started yelling, "My dad just hit me." And he said, "Get to your room." So he went to his room, and I'm just about crying now. So, but he's only in there for 5 minutes, and I ran upstairs and I said, "Bruce, Daddy's so sorry. I lost my temper. I shouldn't have done that. Now let's start again and see if we can get to the cottage." And he said, "Okay." And he ran downstairs and he said to his mother, "Well, Dad just apologized. Are you going to?" So I'm just throwing that out there as a typical example of some of the things that we had to deal with. And then, of course, as time went on, it got a lot worse.
But in control of the situation at the time, right? What were the first signs of his ADD, as we now call it ADHD?
Well, I guess his objectionable behavior, argumentative, and there were a lot of arguments in our house, and we wanted two things. We wanted to understand what was going on in his mind better, and we wanted peace in the house. And so we started dragging Bruce to psychologists and doctors, and I think every one of them agreed that he had a case of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, which made him ripe for taking chances, and there weren't many he didn't take. Consequences be damned.
It is there. One of the things that, well, one of the elements that is sort of a clue is risk-taking.
Yeah,
behavior,
impulsivity.
right?
Yeah.
Impulsivity. Yeah. How did that show itself?
Oh, there were constant, I guess, calls from school. It was a special day when he didn't get detention. We tried to help him through the use of Ritalin, and he would take it sometimes, and Bruce got through school. But it was always, I guess, some sort of argument on the go, seen constantly. And then his descent into addiction was the same path followed by many an addict, which is weed in high school, which doesn't separate a lot of classmates from each other. But then that propensity to take chances, impulsivity, why not try ecstasy, then crystal meth. And from there, it wasn't a giant leap into the opioids and the drug that would eventually claim his life, heroin.
Did you sense warning signs when he was beginning, just even with weed?
We didn't know much about the signs of drug addiction at the time. We would eventually get a very harsh education, and one, of course, that we hoped we never would have had to get. But we constantly said to Bruce as he got older, and we were worried about, in particular, when he got out of high school, it was difficult to get him organized, to get him to get some order to his life. And we said to him repeatedly, if there is an issue here, let us know and we'll help you. But we didn't really know what to look for. Yeah. And then it got presented to us that one night, you read about this in the book, when we'd been in Nova Scotia for my parents, my mother's 75th birthday. And I won't go into a lot of detail because that's important in the book, but Bruce had been assaulted. Darcy phoned us to tell us. There wasn't much we could do, 3,000 miles away. We got home. Darcy brought Bruce home. We hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks. And there he stood in full addicted regalia. Anne was at that point a nurse, and so she knew, some of the signs to look for, and we knew right away that he was in trouble. And off to the Health Sciences Center we went, and that was the start of the journey that lasted about 5 years before he eventually died.
The Health Sciences Center then detox, right? And there was a doctor who told you to expect failure, to anticipate failure, even when you thought everything you were out of the woods, right?
We thought, and I think this would be the thought of a lot of parents who are encountering something like this for the first time, we thought we were doing everything right. First of all, I should tell you that night at the Health Sciences emergency room, there I sat with my 20 don't run for the exits, I'll be fine. With my 20-year-old son in my lap, and he was starting to come down. So he just wanted to run and get whatever he needed to get right. And I was desperately trying to hold on to him, telling him, encouraging him that everything will be fine. We'll get this taken care of. And so I think at 2 a.m, we'd been there for, felt like 24 hours, but it was more like 6 or 7, maybe 8 hours. Doctor saw him and identified the problem immediately. Took him 10 seconds to figure it out. And he said it's addiction, and we have 2 choices. We can put you on the waiting list for AFM, or which is now, I think, at that point was 2 to 3 months long, or you can go private and get this dealt with immediately. So our decision was instantly, we'll go private. And I went home, we got home, and Bruce had to stay with us for 2 or 3 days before he could get into the detox unit at Health Sciences. And I started Googling treatment centers, and the first one to come up, I called. And honest to God, it was 2 calls later before I finally figured out it was in Toronto. I thought it was in Winnipeg, but they had conquered the algorithm, you see. So at that point, he was already committed to go there because we were going to do something here to get this fixed right away. So we thought money, treatment, he'll go through it and we'll all go back to our happy little lives. The doctor you referenced was Dr. Lindy Lee, beautiful woman who devoted a large part of her medical practice to dealing with addiction. She ran the detox unit at Health Sciences. And she examined Bruce, and then she called Ann and I in, and she said, well, he's got a lot going on here with addiction, so prepare yourself for failure. And we dismissed that out of hand because, again, we're doing everything right. What more could we do? And as it turned out, she was right. It was just the start of an odyssey, of a journey.
As things became more complex for you, more complex for Bruce, for the family, you say you asked yourself a lot of what if questions. A little bit later on, you say no more woulda, coulda, shoulda, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance that out?
We did the best we could at every step of the way. What Ann and I had going for us was that we never argued over anything when it came to what we should do to help Bruce, to whether, impose some punishment, whatever it was. We were always on the same wavelength. There was because addiction can tear families apart. And there was never any of, well, it's your fault because you gave him that $500. Or if you hadn't done this, he'd never be in this mess. We always were on the same wavelength. And that was a beautiful thing that really saved us as a family, because if we had been that family that was at each other's throats, we probably wouldn't have survived it. So we had that going for us. And when the worst happened and Bruce died, it was hard. Darcy has framed it nicely. He says it's like you have a 10-pound brick in your pocket, and some days it's heavier than others, but it's always there. But as time went on and we talked a lot about Bruce, we agreed that we did everything we possibly could to keep him alive. And so we never lost a minute's sleep over woulda, coulda, shoulda. Not at all. Largely because we were on the same wavelength, and because everything we did for Bruce, and it might have been a screaming argument, but everything was out of love to keep him alive.
It's an amazing portrait you paint of a marriage too, Scott, I have to say. You lucked out.
I did. I say in the book, that God looked kindly on me when he brought Ann and I together. She was the perfect partner for me because my job required that I travel a lot. And the joke used to be, she would say it jokingly, but there was a tinge of truth to it. I'm a single parent. When I had to go away, whether it was a 9-week run in the Stanley Cup playoffs or 8 weeks at the Olympics in some corner of the world, or just going away every Friday for Hockey Night in Canada before that CFL games, and being gone till Sunday, so you miss weekends when families are families. She never once complained, and just buckled down and went about the business of running the house and raising the boys. And then in her 40s, when she got tired of waiting for me to come home, she went back to school and got a nursing degree and went to work, graduated on the dean's list. Studying around the house was quite the thing. It wasn't called anatomy, it was called anatomy, physiology. But she was a great student, and she graduated on the dean's list and went to work in palliative care and made visits to the homes of the dying in their last days to make sure they were comfortable. That was her. Her whole life was defined by how she cared for people, and that was a driving force behind the establishment of the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre, and that spirit carries on at the Antelope Family Recovery Centre, and that project's well underway.
Best blind date you've ever had, eh?
Yep, met at what was it called?
The restaurant? The
No.
Town and Country? No.
Town and Country. Yes, pardon me. Come on, put your hand up if you've been to the Town and Country. Yeah, of course. Less. You hung out there.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And Ray and Jerry's plays a role in who you decided to hire as an executive director.
Greg Kyle was our executive director, and that was.
I should identify Ray and Jerry's as a Winnipeg institution.
Yeah, well, I think everybody here knows.
But maybe online, because there are people watching.
Oh, you're
across
right.
the-
Yeah, I thought of that.
Yeah. Hasn't
You mean
changed
other
since-
people are watching this?
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
We needed an executive director, and Marnie, who is the executive director of our foundation, along with Joe Liuzzi, said, there's this guy that works for the Canadian Mental Health Association. You might have some prospects as executive director of Bruce Oake, and why don't we meet him? So Ann and I and Marnie met him at Ray and Jerry's, and Greg came with his now wife, his partner, then Marion, and we spoke for 3 hours. He's from Winnipeg. He wanted to come home. He saw an opportunity to work on a blank canvas to establish a program that would be unique to Manitoba. And at the end of that meeting, I said to Marty in the parking lot, F it, hire him. And that was it. That was the job search right there. No posting, no nothing. And, I guess you'd say we rolled the dice, but we hit the mother load. He's done a wonderful job. Greg and Kyle, Scott Robson, Director of Operations, Kyle, of course, is Director of Programs, have created a culture at Bruce Oake that is the envy of recovery centers in North America, and if not the world. Greg recently attended an international recovery conference in the Netherlands, where he presented, this was at the end of July, and he presented the results of Bruce Oake, which is currently running at a 57% success rate. And those results were judged to be world class. So we throw around terms like, hey, that's world class or whatever, but we got the evidence.
Yeah,
And it's special. Greg and Kyle, Scott get calls on a regular basis from all over North America, people in the field of treatment and recovery wanting to know about the incredible results of Bruce Oake. So what we have in this frozen burg of Winnipeg is an international success story, and we're very proud of it.
And it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get over it.
Yeah.
The first thing you see when you get there is a beautiful building, beautifully designed building surrounded by nature.
Mm-hmm.
Sturgeon Creek.
Yeah.
Where Métis relatives of mine used to fish.
Yeah. Well, the minute
It's
the
gorgeous.
Bruce Oake fish
Yeah.
there now, it's part of
Yeah.
one of the programs, right?
It really is.
They actually haul fish out of Sturgeon Creek.
That's
Unless they get
fantastic.
their hooks caught in the
Yeah.
shopping cart, other than that, it's fine.
That's the first thing you notice outside. It's placed in nature so perfectly. And then when you go in, I just felt, flooded by light.
Mhm.
It was gorgeous.
It is bathed in natural light. When we first saw the property, but what the short story on that is that when we were in the public consciousness enough that, we started raising money, we went to the city to ask for help in the form of a surplus building, and they took us seriously.
Yeah.
And subsequently gave us a list of surplus properties, and Vimy Arena in the Crestview area was on it. And they said, go have a look at it. So we went out there with a couple of our directors and 3 members of the architectural firm MNP, who eventually did design the building. And our first thought was, what in the hell are we going to do with an abandoned hockey rink? As soon as we saw it, we knew we had to have it, not for the building, but for the property. It's in a serene location, as you say. It's on a bus route. It doesn't border on anybody's backyards. You're not looking over the fence at somebody having a barbecue and vice versa. And it just looked like a beautiful place to recover. So we fought hard for the property, and we eventually got it. And the building itself just complements the property. And you're right. It breathes, lives and breathes nature. And we think the building itself screams welcome home, bathed in natural light, which makes it a perfect place to recover. It's not some dark, dank institutional place that you don't want to go into, you can't wait to get out of. This place is gorgeous, and it's in a lot of cases the nicest place that many of the participants of Bruce Oake have ever lived. It's a little bit hard getting them out sometimes.
Talk about the first thing you see when you go in the building, Scott.
Well, Bruce's urn.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on gate leg table in our family room at home for years, and didn't want to part with him, obviously. So, and neither did I. And as the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre became real, and we knew the building would be constructed, it was Joe Liuzzi who said that's where he should be. And so you walk in, and the first thing you see on your left is Bruce, his urn in a nice, beautiful display case. It's perfect because that's his legacy, but also his presence there is a strong message to each of the participants, which is do your work or this could be you. And they see him every day, and it's where he belongs, and we're happy he's there.
You don't have the last word in the book. You give that to Terrence.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Terrence?
Terrence came to us from Headingley, been in Stoney before that. He's a beautiful man, which you would not have said about him when he was deeply into the gang life. But now Terrence calls himself a spiritual gangster. He graduated from the program, went back to school, got his GED, recently completed a counseling certification at Yellow Quill College. And he's going to start a bachelor's program, I think, soon. So he's completely transformed his life, and he's the poster boy for Bruce Oake. And I love talking to him. And a while ago, he told me about a car he had bought, and he's very proud of the car. You know, trying to get his license back, and the car represented a significant improvement in his life. And he said, you know what? It's the first car I never stole. He's a great guy, and you know, he's an inspiration to everybody around there. When you talk to Terrence, someone's just coming into Bruce Oake as a participant, talk to him for a few minutes, and you know it can be done. You know you can get your life back.
He writes that when he goes in, he says to Bruce, "Hi, homie."
Yeah,
That's what he does.
he does.
Yeah. And like so many of the people who work there, they're in recovery too.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
There are 30 employees of Bruce Oake, and I think only 3 are not in recovery. The first treatment center that Bruce went to, which is described in the book, was a for-profit facility just outside of Toronto that was staffed to a large extent by masters of whatever, book learned people. And it's just the way it was. But Bruce could get over on them so fast that it wasn't funny. And the best year of his addicted life, as I mentioned, was at Simon House, and all the counselors there are in recovery. So they took one look at him when he checked in and said, "We got your bullshit." And I'm happy to say that that's one of the reasons that that's a key part of the program and the staffing of Bruce Oake, is that Kyle and Scott and Greg, they're all in recovery. Counselors are all in recovery. I think collectively the 4 counselors have something like 90 years. Kyle himself's got what? 13 years. Greg has got almost 20 now. And so the whole concept is they have talk the talk, of course, but they've also walked the walk. And that means a lot to anyone who comes to Bruce Oake as a participant. They know that the person who's trying to help them has been there.
What a
You know, it's kind of like in the NHL.
Yeah.
If your coach has never played hockey, you might be able to get away with it. But when things are going bad, there's a good chance that, you know, someone on the team's going to turn around and say, what would you know about it? You never played. Same concept. And it's one of the reasons that Bruce Oake is the most successful, along with our partners in Calgary, Fresh Start, the two most successful not-for-profit treatment centers in all of Canada and all of North America, and now we're internationally recognized. I want to be careful about using the we term because I have nothing to do with running Bruce Oake. And I stand by this statement, and that is, if I did, it would be closed in 2 weeks, 3 at the most. So I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, and Anne was as well. And so running the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre is left to Greg and Kyle and Scott and the counselors because they know what they're doing.
But you're there a lot.
Well, I go there, yeah, a lot, to make sure it's being run according to my standards. Not at all. I go there to meet the guys, to have lunch with them on a regular basis, to exercise with them. I spend a lot of time, you know, weight room with them, and just to be around them. Yeah, look at me.
You're a specimen.
Yeah, I'll say. Yeah, so I like to be around there. It's just I love walking into that building. You can feel the vibe right away, especially on days when there's a ceremony of gratitude. It's just so special. It's a culture of kindness, of love, and of hope.
Yeah, I was there for that last week.
Yeah.
And it was,
For the community lunch, when the guys, there are community lunches every Thursday, and the guys get up and express gratitude and what they're grateful for, and then subsequently receive chips for whether it's 24 hours, a week, a month, 2 months, whatever. And it's
all the
really,
way up to 11 months.
Yeah.
Because what happens at a year?
Well, in a year you get a jet sweater, but I just want to point out that Sheila couldn't eat her lunch because she was crying the whole time.
That's true.
It is emotional.
Thanks for that, Scott. Now it's time for me to tell the blackout story.
All right, yeah. Well, we can get to that. At a year. Go ahead, tell them.
Yeah. Oh, well, all right. So I was trying to set up a visit to the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre before this conversation. I thought it would be useful. And lo and behold, Scott called. I was like, wow, it's Scott Oake, you know, I was pretty excited. And we talked about setting it up when we come. Oh, you've got to come on Thursday for the lunch, for the gratitude session. That's great. About 5 minutes later, you called again. And what did you say, Scott?
I said, hey, Sheila, it's Scott Oake calling. I've been blacking out a lot lately and I can't remember. Did we just talk? And there was this long pause and she went, yes, we did. Thinking, this guy's nuts.
And it's going to make for a great interview. But the jet sweaters.
Torturing people on the phone is one of my favorite pastimes.
Oh, wow. You should have been in radio.
Right, Darcy. The jet sweaters.
Yeah, the jet sweaters. It's so beautiful.
When you walk into the gym and you saw it, it's breathtaking to see 120 jet sweaters hanging from the rafters. Each of those stands for 1 year of sobriety for the man who has his name on the back with the number 1 on the sweater. It's an idea that we took from Fresh Start, but they started, our colleagues at Fresh Start in Calgary, but they started at 5 years, and Greg and Kyle, Scott and staff decided we're not waiting 5 years. We'll start at 1. 1 year sobriety is a significant milestone, very, very significant. And that's how the success rate of Bruce Oake is measured. It's measured on 1 year of sobriety after entering the program. So it's a significant measurement. It's not completing a 21-day or a 45-day program. Upon the 1 year birthday is referred to as the date you stopped using. It's at the end of your first year, you get a jet sweater, and it with their name on it. It may seem like it's a cheap carnival trick, but those sweaters are highly, highly valued. You'll often hear conversations around the recovery center like, can't wait till I get my jet sweater. I get it next week or whenever it happens to be. Birthday night's the last Wednesday of every month. It's like one tomorrow night, isn't it? 29th, right? And families come, and the participant who gets the sweater gets up and talks about his recovery, and it's well, that's how the book starts, actually.
Yeah.
And it's really, really special. A lot of those sweaters, and it's not hyperbole to say this, a lot of those sweaters are the difference between life and death. I think that the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre is probably the only place in Winnipeg and in Manitoba, if not all of the NHL, where those sweaters mean more than they mean to the guys who actually wear them in games. Yeah.
I think you should get everybody wearing them, just confuse them. Just don't go down the area, just confuse everybody.
Well, we're victims of our own success because we're down to one girder now, so we're not sure what we're gonna do. Yeah. And they stand for 1 year of sobriety, but in fact, many of those guys have more than one, two, and in some cases 3. There shouldn't be any math on a night like this, but I'm gonna do just a little bit for you now. There was a study done as part of Calgary's 10-year plan to end homelessness in about 2008 that determined that if you take a high-flying addict off the street, he or she stays sober for a year, it can save the taxpayer as much as $138,000. It's not hard to reconcile that when you consider less demand on fire, police, health, social services, justice, etc. One critical visit to the hospital can be 20, 30, 40,000, who knows? But again, the study was done in 2008. So if you, that's 17 years ago, multiply 17 by 2.2% inflation every year, and 138,000 becomes about $200,000 in today's dollars. There are 120 jet sweaters that hang in the gym. 120 jet sweaters times $200,000 means to this point, the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre has saved the taxpayer as much as $24 million. So that's a good deal for everybody. And of course, that's the economic side of the argument. The most beautiful thing is that lives are being saved and men are being returned to their families, their loved ones, their jobs, and society in general.
It feels like a family place.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel institutional. The gym's gorgeous, the workout room, top-notch equipment, everything is lovely. I want to talk to you about your favorite room there.
The family room?
Yeah.
Yeah. The family room was designed by Anne before she passed away. We went shopping for the furniture for it, and she and I together, I lost interest in 10 minutes. Just buy that, for Christ's sake, it's fine. But she took great care to, all the way to making sure that the table there is acrylic, so the kids sitting at it, can't.
They can paint, they can do crafts, they can, yeah.
And the couch and the chairs, it's just beautiful. As Greg always says at Bruce Oake, we don't have a boardroom, we have a family room. Every room there is special, but this one is really touching. I can recall walking down the hallway one night, and we had a participant named Errol who had lost his kids. He and his wife were both in the life. His wife had no interest in trying to get better. Errol was desperately trying to get his kids back. They were in care. And I was walking down the hallway, and there was Errol in the family room with his 3 kids, 7-year-old having her very first birthday party. Very first in her life. And so that's what that room is for. And it's not, you can walk by the family room, it's all glass on the outside so you can see it. You can, there could be a younger participant in there watching a movie with his mother or his grandmother or whatever. Family is, Kyle would be better equipped to explain this than me, but family is critical in the Bruce Oake program. Family are welcome anytime. You're not isolated from your family. It's all about bringing families together. Hazel runs our family program, and she has seminars once a month. Yep. And they're always well attended by families. So families are welcome to come and learn more about what's at play here, how to deal with your loved one who's suffering from substance abuse or addiction. Yeah, families are it's a constant, an ongoing theme at Bruce Oake.
Just outside the family room in the hallway, there's some paintings up on the wall, some prints up on the wall.
Bruce's favorite book was Love You Forever by Robert Munsch. Yeah. And another moment, but I'll be fine. And read it to him every night. And the Buellers, Bonnie and John, are the greatest benefactors of Bruce Oake. And Bonnie became close. And they were standing in the hallway at the recovery center one day, and they got talking about the book. And Bonnie said, well, as a matter of fact, we have the original prints of Love You Forever. They bought them at some charity event. There's 2 sets of prints, and one hangs in Bonnie and John's house. John just passed away a while ago. But one hangs in their house, and the other was boxed up in the basement. They had been lending it out to the prints, lending them out to different organizations across the country to display for a while. But Bonnie said, you should have them here. And so they arrived one day, and they were boxed up, and Greg and Kyle and staff decided that it was perfect to hang just outside the family room. And it tells the story of, when the little boy is born, and right through to when his mother passes away and he has his own child. The significance of those prints is not lost on anyone there, because I remember talking to a couple of participants who, I think one guy was on the street for 2 years, and he looked at those prints one day, and I was talking to him, and he said, that was my favorite book. My mother read me that book when I was a child. Those prints just prove that everybody is somebody's child, and no one dreams of growing up to be an addict or to be in a treatment center. But it happens. If you got to be in one, Bruce Oake is the one to be in. Yeah.
I think Robert Munsch and Sheila McGraw, the illustrator, would be very, very pleased that they were there. Yeah.
They're beautifully placed and very simple.
Yeah. Another thing about the center, well, these were your words. It's kind of truth and reconciliation in action.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean by that?
At any time, 40% of the participants of Bruce Oake are Indigenous. And sometimes, as I say, it's more. We have Greg Kylo, our executive director, got sober at an Indigenous Recovery Centre. We have a very strong attachment to the Indigenous community, and their cultures are well respected there. There's a sweat lodge in the back, sweats every Friday. You'll find as many white guys in there as Indigenous on any day. We have our meditation room, which is ventilated for smudging. So a lot of our Indigenous participants reconnect with their culture when they come to Bruce Oake. But the most beautiful thing, I think, is that a lot of the participants of whatever race leave there with a greater understanding of what their Indigenous brethren have gone through. So it is truth and reconciliation in action. Truth and reconciliation is a wonderful topic. People love to talk about it, and that's usually where it stops. But Kyle would agree with this. It happens every day at Bruce Oake, every day.
I want to put a little bit more color, I think I'll say more muscle on Bruce right now.
Mm-hmm.
He got into boxing.
Mm-hmm.
How did he do?
He got into boxing, I think, in large part. Well, but Bruce was always about testing the margins, and he was good at hip hop and won a lot of rap battle contests.
Yeah.
And boxing would be another thing that I guess you would say is on the margins. So he was attracted to it because of that, but largely I think because he had seen me cover it at 2 Olympic Games. Russ Amber and I had been a team cover boxing at the Olympics. And Bruce always wanted to please his parents. He wanted to please me. So he wanted to get into boxing. And of course, our first answer was not chance. And who wants to see their kid get hit in the head, right? But he, again, that dogged determination wouldn't take no for an answer. So took him over to the Crescentwood Boxing Club and signed him up. And that kid had guts. He wasn't the most talented athlete in the world. Darcy is a natural athlete because he's long and lean, and he was a great diver, had prospects of being a good diver, and good coordination. Bruce was more like Happy Gilmore. But he had guts. And pretty soon he'd get into a van with his boxing club teammates who were 18 and 19 years of age, and he's 14. You know, they'd drive to some small town in northern Minnesota where he'd fight a guy 2 years older than him and he'd win. And we really had difficulty understanding this because there's no one in my family ever had the guts to get in the ring without 4 shots of rye under their belt, the metaphorical ring. So you know, he was devoted to it, and we loved it for him because he had a particular interest in it and he was pretty good. Oh, the story about the day that, should I tell that?
Oh, why not?
Yeah. Crescentwood Boxing Club, he was training there. Darcy and I went to pick him up. Bruce was the last guy there, so he was the guy who'd have to turn the lights out. And he had been asking me every week or every training session I went to for about a month before that. He was getting ready to go to the Canada Games. And he'd been asking me after every workout, come on, Dad, get into the ring. Because he had, you know, completely and totally misread the situation, thinking that because I could talk about a sport on TV, I should be able to perform it at an expert level. And every time he asked me, I'd say, no, I'm not doing that. You know, I knew smart enough to know there was nothing to be gained. Nothing good could come out of that. And this day at the Crescentwood Boxing Club, I don't know why I did it, but he said, come on, Dad, get in the ring. And I thought, well, there's no one around. No one's going to see this. So I gloved up, got in the ring, and within 15 seconds, I was bent over against the corner turnbuckle with kidney shots raining down on me, praying that I'd only be passing blood for about 2 weeks. And the deepest cut of all was Bruce walked away and did this. He went, it's got nothing. And then Canufis there cut me even deeper when he said, and this is not to be sexist, this is just what he said innocently. He said, Dad, I don't want to say anything, Dad, but you kind of look like a girl in there.
And a little bit of fear on Bruce's part that if some guy came to invade your house.
Oh yeah, he said on the way home, you know, Dad, if a criminal, he had his answer. I mean, every kid, I suppose, at some point in their life, in their teens, has wondered, you know, if he could take the old man, but I don't know. I mean, why would you ever have any reason to find out? And certainly in a loving home like ours, why would you ever have that reason? But he had his answer. He knew he could take the old man. And so he said on the way home, you know, Dad, if a criminal broke into our house, I'd have to say this. You couldn't do it. And I came up with some horseshit answer about, no, it's an old man strength. I'd be able to, I don't know what I said, but he knew.
You did just talk very briefly about his rapping and his relationship with hip hop, and he was really, really good.
Yeah.
Did he help you with your interview with Snoop Dogg?
Actually, that was Darcy who helped me.
Darcy.
Yeah.
Right on.
It was the Stanley Cup final of 07, Anaheim and Ottawa, and it was game, I don't know, 5, 6, whatever. And our producer said, Snoop's coming to the game tonight, you should interview him. And I knew who Snoop Dogg was, but I didn't know, you know, enough about him to bring anything special to the interview. And so I phoned home, and if Bruce had answered the phone, I would have asked him, but it was Darcy who answered. And I said, hey, I'm going to be interviewing Snoop Dogg tonight. If I had said to him, I'm going to interview Jesus Christ reincarnate, he couldn't have been any more excited. So he says, you're kidding. I said, well, tell me what to say. Give me something. He says, okay, write this down. So this is what he said to me. And with the dog father, D-O double Jizzy, big ups on this crumb planet. What's crackling nephew? I said, what is that, Russian? He goes, no, just read it. So I read it back to him just the way I just said it. He goes, if you say it like that to him, he'll think you're making fun of him. He'll stab you. So he said, you know, say it with some conviction. So I got in front of the mirror. I didn't care about doing anything else on the game that night. Like the 10 things I had to do, I couldn't care less about. I just wanted to get this right. And so I rehearsed it in front of the mirror for about 2 hours. And I went over, Snoop was on between the first and second period. And so walk over and we're going to talk to him coming back from commercial just before the puck is dropped for the second period. There's like maybe a minute and a half there. And I sat with him for a while and I kind of got the read on him that he was a good enough guy that he might go along with this. So I thought, I'll try it. But I was before that had debated seriously not doing it. So anyway, come back from commercial and it came out like this. And I said, I'm with the Dogfather, D.O. double Jizzy. Hiccups on this front banner. What's crackling, nephew? And he goes, I'm doing good, baby. And I love the way you said that. And I went, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. And that sadly is the highlight of my career. People still talk about that in 2007. I'm hoping before I finish up that I'll do something equally as entertaining, but there's probably no chance. But it was Darcy who wrote the script.
Awesome. This book it's a portrait of a really incredible family, Scott, and you're so open, you're so candid. I think it's going to be of great value to people who are going through this, but I've got to tell you, you would not read from this. And I wish you had, because it reads really beautifully. And I say that as someone who's been reading Canadian books my whole career. And I had a literature program for 15 years. It's terrific. And you and Michael Hingston, you've done a wonderful job to bring your family, to make your family very vivid, and the center really, really comes alive. And I know that your proceeds are going back to the center, right?
Absolutely. When this whole project started, I don't know if I explained this already tonight, probably not, but
did you have a blackout?
Who are you people? How did I get here? I'll be needing a ride home. I got a call from an agent who asked me if I would write a book about my career, and I said, not a chance.
You didn't, by the way, so go ahead.
Yeah, okay, good. No, I said no because, what I said to him was, listen, I'll write a book about my career when every single person I know in the world is dead. So phone me back in 2058 or whatever, and jokingly, but my point was that there are multiple guys in my business who've had more prolific careers than me, who haven't written books, and I'm not going to subject anybody to one for me or by me. And then the conversation turned to Bruce and the Recovery Centre, and I said I would have an appetite to tell that story, and that was the genesis of the book. But I knew from the outset that if there was any money involved, and there's been some, that every penny of mine from the book, all my royalties, would go to the Bruce and Ann Foundation, because I could not sleep at night if I pocketed any of that money. I would see that as blood money. And I'm happy that there's been some measure of financial support from the book to the Recovery Centre. And if all of you here tonight buy 5 books each, we could make some money.
I'm just going to wrap it up, and by wrap I mean W-R-A-P.
Okay.
Just to say, December 19th, 2024, you were informed that you would be appointed to the Order of Canada, and the motto for the Order of Canada is they desire a better country. And on behalf of everybody here and everybody watching online, thank you for helping to build a better country.
Thank you.
Scott. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Shelagh. There's just a couple of people I'd like to acknowledge. Darcy's here tonight, and the 2 most important people in the world, former Air Canada concierges who took care of my big fat white ass when I traveled. Janice and John, it's so good to see you guys. And Les, and a lot of people I haven't seen in a while are here tonight. I really appreciate you all coming out. Honestly, it indicates a lot of support for the Bruce Oake Recovery Centre. And just by being here tonight, I know that you all support the belief that those who suffer from substance abuse, if they want it, should have a chance to get their lives back, to get healthy again. Thank you.
Thank you both so very much. Thank you all. I'm going to make you applaud a few more times, so just prepare for that. Right now, we are going to send Scott along with my colleague Angela, who is going to get him situated at the signing table. So we'll just ask that you all please remain in place for just a moment, and I will review those exciting signing procedural details I mentioned earlier. So in just a moment, we will start the signing. There'll be a moment of glorious chaos when everybody gets into line, and then all will be well. Myself and some other colleagues will wander down the line, writing your names on Post-it notes. This is not because we don't trust you to remember how to spell your own name. It just ensures that you can spend more time talking than spelling when you get to the table. And there's something particularly unique about a book launch where people from every single aspect of your life gather in a single place. You can occasionally blank on even the name of a wife, or a best friend for 20 years. So please just indulge us and we will write your name on that Post-it note. We're so very grateful to Simon and Schuster Canada for publishing this book and for making this evening a possibility. And there's one more signing thing I need to tell you. I have not done my job properly. There is also the fact that you can get into line and purchase a book after you get it signed. Just please do remember to pay for the book at some point this evening before you hit the parking lot. And we will distribute some books to those of you in line so that we can post it that much more easily too. And if you happen to want to picture with Scott at all, just have your phone out and ready to go, and one of my colleagues will be there. We just don't know technology, so we just have to be able to press a button. But once again, we're so very grateful to Simon and Schuster Canada. We're so thankful to all of you for braving the streets of Winnipeg to be here for this incredibly special evening. So very grateful to Shelagh Rogers for hosting this event. We feel incredibly lucky that we managed to lure her to Winnipeg and take glorious advantage of her presence in the city. And of course, we're so very grateful for writing this book and for being the incredible human that he is, Scott Oake. Please listen to him.